Today, we are diving into the absolutely wild story of how humanity discovered oil. And trust me, it begins in a place you would never, ever expect.
Think about oil. You probably picture black gold, right? The stuff that powers our cars, our planes, our entire world. But before all of that, this sticky black substance that oozed out of the earth it was something else entirely. For a long time, especially for early American settlers, it was just annoying. Guys drilling for salt water were constantly ticked off by this slimy black goo contaminating their wells. Then, one guy, Samuel Keir, sees this stuff and thinks, hey, that looks like the medicine my wife was prescribed. So what does he do? He starts bottling it and selling it as a cure-all. But its real story? Oh, it goes back way, way further than that. And here it is, our first big wait, what moment. Archaeologists have found tools in Syria from 70,000 years ago that have traces of bitumen, which is just natural asphalt, used as a super strong glue to attach handles. Yep, you heard that right. Neanderthals were using petroleum products before we were.
So, that's the big question, right? If we've known about this stuff for tens of thousands of years, what changed? How did we go from prehistoric superglue and snake oil to the absolute lifeblood of modern civilization?
I mean, just look at this timeline. For basically all of recorded history, surface oil has been a part of the human toolkit. It was used as mortar to build the walls of Babylon, to waterproof ancient ships, to grease the axles of Egyptian chariots. And the ancient Chinese even figured out how to use it as fuel by drilling with bamboo. But here's the key thing to understand. For all these uses, nobody was actually looking for oil. It was all just opportunistic. You know, if you happened to find a puddle of it, you'd find a use for it. It was handy, for sure, but it wasn't something you'd build your whole world around. And this brings us to the real pivot point in the story. Something happened in the middle of the 19th century that created this sudden, massive, desperate global demand for something new. There was a huge problem, and it turned out this sticky black goo was the perfect solution. And that problem? It was light. I mean, literally. By the 1850s, the world was actually running out of light. The best fuel for lamps was whale oil, but we had hunted whale populations to the absolute brink. The cost of just lighting your home after sunset was going through the roof. Society was staring down a very real energy crisis. The solution came from our old friend Samuel Keir, the medicine guy. He figured out he could boil or distill his rock oil and turn it into a really clean-burning fuel for lamps. A chemist from Yale, Benjamin Silliman Jr., confirmed it, proving crude oil could make amazing kerosene. Suddenly, the race was on. The only problem? They needed a ton of crude oil. But you have to remember, the idea of drilling for oil was just laughable to people. When a group of investors sent a guy named Edwin Drake to a little town in Pennsylvania to try and drill a well, the locals openly mocked him. This quote pretty much sums it up. They called his entire project Drake's Folly. So for months, Drake struggles. And then, on August 27, 1859, his drill bit hit oil. And the depth? Get this, a mere 69.5 feet. It was an unbelievable stroke of luck. He just happened to drill in one of the few places where the oil was that close to the surface. And the world changed literally overnight. The Pennsylvania oil rush began. Look at this chart. In 1859, production was 2,000 barrels. Just 6 years later, 500,000. America was now running on kerosene.
Okay, but here's our second wait, what moment. The story we all learn is that cheap kerosene simply beat expensive whale oil in a fair market fight. The reality? So much more complicated. See, kerosene's real competitor wasn't just whale oil. It was cheap, burning fluids often made with industrial alcohol. Then, in 1862, the U.S. government, desperate for money to fund the Civil War, slapped a massive tax on alcohol. That one move basically killed kerosene's main competition. The oil industry didn't just win on its own. It got a huge, decisive boost from the government. Now, the early days of oil were total chaos. Boom and bust cycles made and broke fortunes in the blink of an eye. This chaos is what allowed John D. Rockefeller to come in and build his ruthless Standard Oil monopoly. But just when oil seemed to have conquered the world of light, a new threat appeared: Thomas Edison and the electric light bulb. Kerosene's days looked numbered until another invention, the automobile, came along and created a massive new market for a throwaway byproduct, gasoline. And right there, oil's entire purpose shifted.
It wasn't about lighting up the night anymore. It was about movement, about power, about becoming the fuel for the entire 20th century. This new dependence changed oil from just another product into a critical strategic asset. Countries quickly realized that if you control the oil, you control the world economy. That thinking is what led to things like the U.S. Strategic Petroleum Reserve, basically a giant emergency stockpile that shows just how central oil became to national security.
And the scale is just mind-boggling. We're talking about hundreds of millions of barrels of crude oil, stored deep underground in these enormous man-made salt caverns. It's a literal weapon of geopolitics, a pretty stark symbol of how far oil has come from being sold as a phony medicine.
So now, let's circle all the way back to the whales, because that's where the lighting part of our story began. We've all heard that comforting tale, right? That the discovery of oil was great news for whales, that cheap kerosene came along just in the nick of time to save them from extinction. It's a nice story. And here is our final and maybe our most shocking wait, what moment. That story is a complete and total myth. The truth is brutal. The age of oil wasn't the salvation of the whales. It was the single deadliest period they have ever faced in their entire history. As you can see here, the peak whale catch in the 20th century, powered by petroleum, was an unbelievable 3 times higher than the peak of the 19th century sailing era.
So, how? Simple. Oil turned whaling into an industrial slaughterhouse. Fossil fuels gave us faster ships that could hunt in the most remote oceans. They powered new, more powerful harpoons. And they allowed for massive factory ships that could process whales right there at sea, making the hunt a relentless 24/7 operation. And that legacy, the one that started at 69.5 feet in Pennsylvania, is all around us today. It's not just the gas in your car. It's in the plastics of your phone and computer, the fertilizers that grow your food, the materials that make up your clothes. It's everything.
There's a real irony here, isn't there? The substance that promised to bring cheap, clean light into every home now casts some of the longest and most complicated shadows over our modern world.
It all makes you wonder, what's the next Drake's Folly? What's the crazy idea everyone is laughing at today that's quietly waiting to be discovered, ready to change our world all over again in ways we can't even begin to imagine?